Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Saskatchewan Retirees Association webcast. My name is Randy Dove. I'm the president of the Saskatchewan Retirees Association, and we're very pleased to have over 128 people registered for today's webcast. We hope that people continue to log in, as we now have actually passed over 500 people that have registered for our various webcasts that we've been running over the last few months. We're happy to have your interest, and we look forward to putting on a good webcast for you, and hope that you are ready to hear a great presentation and engage with us with some solid questions. We want to also acknowledge that the land where this webcast originates is Treaty 4 territory. We also acknowledge Treaties 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10, traditional territory of Indigenous peoples and the homeland of the Métis. The SRA mandate is to provide services and support to retired provincial government employees. We now have 3,800 members that we're serving and have had steady growth over the last number of years as the organization continues to attract new members and provide services to you. So we're very happy with that. We're happy that we have now 70 various organizational members, including the executive government, ministries, the crowns, agencies, boards, and commissions, and the two universities, the Sask Polytech, the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and the Saskatchewan Regional Colleges. So it's a very diverse group of individuals that are now involved in supporting the Saskatchewan Retirees Association, and we're proud to have you aboard. When we talk about strength together, we're really talking about the support and the continued participation that you bring to us, and we then, with your trust, work with through our board and committees to meet your needs. We surveyed members earlier in, I guess now it's in 2022, to talk about things that the SRA could do and what your interests are. As a result of that, 1,600 members responded to that survey and told us that we could communicate more, and showed us some indication of areas that you're interested in providing or getting more information from us. And so this is a response to that. This is an opportunity to look at what we can do to support your needs. That's what we've been doing with these webcasts, and so this is a continuation of that process. This is the fourth of a group, as I mentioned. We are looking at doing additional webcasts later this year. This will be the final one here in the winter-spring time frame, and then we will look at additional ones later in the year. Because of your support, we continue to see this as a way to meet with you and communicate information to you and get your feedback and ideas about what topics matter to you. A couple of instructions for you. If you've got questions, you'll see on your screen the Ask Questions box on the right of your screen. If you have a question, please put it in there. It will come into us, and when we ask your question on your behalf, we will use a first name. We won't use full names, but we will identify people by first name, so you may know that that's your question coming in. And that they will be grouped together so that we don't ask the same question several times, and to do that. And so all the questions that we get will be put together and will be posted on our website in due course. I just want to introduce now Lyle Fluter. Lyle is one of the directors of the Saskatchewan Retirees Association. He will be handling the questions for us and assisting the process. And so when you see Lyle on the screen now and then maybe a bit later, that's who will be handling the questions on your behalf. If you have any technical difficulties during this webcast, please click the tech support button on the top right of your screen, and our technical resources through Webcast Canada and I guess through Webcast Canada will attempt to resolve your issues. And so we will work through that situation with you to try and make sure you can stay on with us and continue to participate in the session. Today's event is around nutrition, healthy lifestyle choices, We want to focus on nutrition and healthy lifestyles. We hope there's an opportunity for you to take away some tips and tools to help you work through any questions and any issues you may be having. A couple of statistics or pieces of information for you just to reinforce the importance and why we have a webcast going around nutrition and healthy aging and healthy lifestyles. Through our SRA health and dental plans, we do continue to see what's happening in terms of the use of medications and the amount of conditions and diseases that are affecting members across Saskatchewan. So we're seeing increasing claims on areas like diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, ulcers, anxiety, and depression. Those are increasing in terms of our claims, and we're now those types of situations, particularly diabetes, it now makes up 27% of our overall claims under the health plan. Our average claim now per individual that's insured under our SRA health plan is now $1,430 a year. That's an 8% increase from last year, and we have seen a similar trend up over the last several years, with claims increasing across these same types of situations: diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol, anxiety, depression, those types of things. 81% of our drug claims now are maintenance drugs to deal with those situations. So from a board perspective, we're saying to each other, and then we will say to you as members, perhaps there are things that we can do to either stop the spread, reduce the frequency, or perhaps reverse some of those trends in order to essentially continue to be sure that we can provide a quality health plan at an affordable price to you, and not just continue to just pay the claims and see the costs rise and that. And so a part of what we are speaking about today relates to the whole question of nutrition, healthy aging, how those things may come together. Our guest speaker, which will be on in a moment, is well prepared to help us with that, and is well prepared to help answer some questions as you hear the presentation and think about what kinds of issues maybe you'd like to get some additional information on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken Lazinski to introduce our speakers. So over to you, Ken.
Thanks, Randy. Good afternoon. My name is Ken Lazinski. As Randy indicated, I'm a board member of SRA, and I'm a co-chair of the Pensions and Issues Committee. It is my pleasure today to introduce our guest speaker, Allison Cammer. Dr. Allison Cammer is a registered dietitian who is an assistant professor in the Division of Nutrition and Dietetics at the University of Saskatchewan. She has a Master of Science in Community Health and Epidemiology, there's a long word, and a PhD in Nutrition. Her research program centers on older adult health, dementia, caregiving, and long-term care. She chairs the Saskatchewan Long-Term Care Registered Dietitian Network, co-chairs the Saskatchewan Dietitians Association Professional Conduct Committee, and is a board member of the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan. Allison is a member of the Rural Dementia Action Research Team and a co-investigator on the Canadian Consortium on the neurodegeneration in aging. I hope that's correctly. Before I turn it over to Allison, I just wanted to say we had a virtual meeting with Allison last week and before this webcast to prepare for the meeting. She's very easy to talk to. She's very knowledgeable in her field, and we are very sure that you folks will enjoy her presentation. So, Allison, welcome to our session today.
Thanks so much, Ken, and thank you for having me here today. I want to start off by saying that March is Nutrition Month, so no better time to have a presentation like this. All right, before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself. Knowing about who I am will hopefully help you understand why I'm interested in nutrition and dementia and about my approach. So I come from a farm outside of Webb, Saskatchewan, in the southwest corner of the province, and I've been a registered dietitian for over 20 years. I love to travel, And one of the most exciting parts of travel for me is exploring different foods. Dietitians often get a bad rap and are thought of as the food police, and I can assure you, not the case. Most of the dietitians I know love food, love staying top of food trends and eating, enjoying food. To the point that I'm part of a foodie group where we make fun theme meals and explore new and interesting foods and flavors. Once, a friend and I even made the periodic table out of cookies. And of course, like a good Saskatchewanian, I cheer for the riders by sporting a traditional watermelon helmet. Like I said, I love food, and I believe that nutrition should be fun and enjoyable. So now, why a dementia lens for today's presentation? Well, the prevalence of dementia has been increasing steadily. We hear a lot about it in the news. And the landmark study was released in the fall of 22, looking at the Canadian experience. It found that the number of persons with dementia in Canada is expected to double by 2030 to 1 million people. And with that in mind, preventing or delaying onset of cognitive decline and dementia is very important. And as I hope you'll see in this presentation, prevention of dementia is also closely tied with prevention or management of many other chronic conditions and healthy living overall. So looking specifically at nutrition and dementia, we know that there is a relationship between the behavioral and biological changes experienced when someone has dementia that predisposes them to further malnutrition risk, and that adequate nutrition care can help to slow the decline of dementia, increase quality of life, limit other effects of the disease. But today we're going to really focus on the part about preventing cognitive decline and dementia. Nutrition does play an important role there. And as you can see by that little image at the bottom of the slide, it's taken from Canada's National Dementia Strategy, which was released in 2019. The 3 pillars of our National Dementia Strategy, Prevent Dementia, is one of them. And it's not just nutrition researchers like me who are interested in nutrition and dementia. This image is from a quick online search of books that advertise dementia and nutrition. The market for the general public is huge, and I want to caution you that none of these books on this slide represent evidence-based healthy nutrition strategies associated with dementia. Now, having said that, there is a strong evidence base for the importance of nutrition in dementia. In 2017, the Lancet Commission on Dementia was published, and it outlined risk factors for dementia, which ones were modifiable, meaning that we could influence them to reduce our risk. There are also non-modifiable risk factors that we can't change, things like our age. We can't change that. It's a privilege to grow older. We wouldn't want to change that. But this was a large study that looked at what are the modifiable risk factors and how can we influence them to reduce risk. A major takeaway from the Lancet Commission was that 1 in 3 cases of dementia could be prevented by addressing 9 lifestyle factors. Now, looking at that, what does this mean? That increasing education, physical activity, social contact, and decreasing hearing loss, hypertension, high blood pressure, obesity, smoking, depression, and diabetes means that following those 9 strategies will help to reduce the risk of developing dementia. But what it doesn't mean is that following the 9 strategies is a perfect guarantee that you won't develop dementia. Then in 2019, the World Health Organization released guidelines and evidence summaries about risk reduction and cognitive decline and dementia, along with the supporting research documents to see the actual studies themselves. The document included 12 recommendations to reduce risk, and highlighted in blue on this slide, you'll see the recommendations pertaining to nutrition. So good nutrition in and of itself, but also weight management, prevention or management of hypertension, diabetes, and dyslipidemia, which is that elevated blood cholesterol. And these are all very associated with nutrition. So let's talk about what in epidemiological terms we call the mechanism of action, but in regular people terms we call the how. How does this happen? How does it work? So poor nutrition can have a direct and an indirect effect on our bodies. So directly what we eat goes into our body, and through the mechanisms of digestion, absorption or metabolism, and then absorption, there are direct effects experienced in our cells, our organs, and in our body. The effects of this then can accumulate, and then indirectly, over time, that accumulation impacts our overall body and our health. It determines our weight, can cause the development or influence the experience of certain health conditions that can then limit the ability of the body to respond to those direct impacts of poor intake, and also become risk factors for other poor health in and of itself. So you can see that it's cumulative and can also create a cycle. So then looking at nutrition, it really does make sense that nutrition plays a role in preventing or managing dementia, preventing or delaying the onset of cognitive decline, or managing dementia in different ways throughout the life course. You can see the blue arrows are pointing to certain things like managing a healthy weight, managing hypertension, detecting and treating diabetes. These are important factors from midlife to late in life. But you can also see a very important bar, the green one with the blue arrow pointing to it, about optimizing diet and nutrition. It's the one factor that's important across the entire spectrum from birth to late life in that life course perspective of cognitive health and healthy aging. So what are our nutrition goals for healthy aging and dementia prevention? Well, generally, we want to eat well to live well, knowing that a healthy intake helps our bodily processes and enables us to do what we need to do and what we want to do. The way we eat well is specific to each individual. Very person-centered approach is needed here. Our cultural food preferences, our likes and dislikes play into this and have to be considered in that healthy eating pattern for healthy aging. And our nutrition goals are going to vary based on each of our own individual health needs and perhaps things like chronic conditions that we manage or our own specific health goals. And then, of course, the lived context always has to be considered when we think about nutrition goals for healthy aging. Where we live will impact our availability of groceries, etc., how we live, our abilities in the kitchen, for example. That will have a strong bearing in what we want to plan for and what we want to achieve. So what do we know about nutrition and healthy aging? Well, we know a lot about different nutrients and nutrient requirements for a healthy body. We even know a lot about how these nutritional requirements change over time as we age. And we know that there are certain nutrients that are very particular importance to brain health, the example being vitamin B12. If we're deficient in vitamin B12, it can lead to cognitive decline. And if not treated early enough, that decline can be permanent. And that's why we recommend screening for vitamin B12 status at our annual medical checkups. As we age, the ability to produce the factor that creates the absorption of B12 from our diet declines. So that's why after the age of 55, we say, make sure you have that screened for each year. It's probably the only nutrient that has that sort of a powerful relationship on cognitive health all by itself. Saying that, we know that there's no magic bullet, one nutrient out there that's going to prevent or cure dementia. You can't supplement your way with one particular nutrient. And nutrient deficiencies rarely exist in isolation. A deficiency or a lowered amount is usually an indicator of a poor diet overall. And we know that people don't eat nutrients. We eat food, and food plays a number of different roles in our lives. Of course, there's the therapeutic or physiological, the fueling your body part, but there are also roles like enjoyment, celebration, connection, and pleasure. So just take a moment, humor me for one moment. Think of the last meal that you really enjoyed, that was just stands out in your mind right now, your last enjoyable, great meal. Think of what foods you ate, where you were eating, whether you were having treasured quiet time to yourself or dining with loved ones. What are the things that come to mind? I'm betting that you're more like me and you're thinking about the foods and the people and the setting and things like that, the flavors, the fun, and not thinking about things like the grams of dietary fiber or the amount of iron that was in the meat. So nutrients are very important, of course, but we eat food. I like to say that nutrients power our bodies, but food powers our spirits. And that's really important to keep in mind when we talk about things like our dietary patterns. And I use the word dietary pattern differently than saying diet. Diet has that connotation of restriction and being very rigid. There's words like compliance, adhering to that diet, things like that. Whereas a dietary pattern is meant to be that regular, habitual pattern of eating that you just follow over life, over years and years and years, not associated with punishment or restriction, etc. So let's dive into some dietary patterns that are very evidence-based for preventing dementia and for healthy aging in general. So the first one's the Mediterranean dietary pattern. It's perhaps the most well-studied in terms of cognitive health. It originated in the 1970s, where researchers were noticing that people living in certain Mediterranean regions weren't developing cardiovascular disease at the same rate as those in other areas. And after a lot of scrutiny, they identified that it was the dietary pattern of the region that was different from all the other factors and might be a protective factor. Again, loads and loads and loads of evidence to support this dietary pattern being helpful for cognitive health and for healthy aging. So what is it? Well, you can see this is based on a pyramid model, which is how different countries will structure their food guides. So if you're thinking of the pyramid model of the Mediterranean dietary pattern, you look at the things that are the largest bars are the basis that you want to emphasize most often, and the things that come up to the smaller, the least often kind of thing. So a Mediterranean dietary pattern emphasizes plant-based foods, whole grains, plenty of vegetables and fruit, legumes, nuts, so legumes being, beans, peas, etc. Using herbs and spices instead of salt for flavoring, olive oil instead of butter, fish and poultry as your meat sources, and limited red meat and limited sweets. Now we're going to move on to the DASH dietary pattern. It stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Again, hypertension being that high blood pressure. And this dietary pattern was originally designed to help control hypertension, to treat people that were experiencing hypertension. So again, you're looking at things like plenty of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, beans, poultry, fish, lower fat dairy, and limited saturated fats, sweetened foods, and sweetened drinks. Again, well established that this is a dietary approach that can really target hypertension and lower blood pressure. Then we'll talk about the MIND dietary pattern. I'll invite you to say this quickly 3 times fast with me. The Mediterranean DASH Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. I'm not doing that 3 times. So shortened to say the MIND dietary pattern. And it was developed by Martha Claire Morris and her colleagues at Rush University Medical Center in the States. They purposefully took elements of the Mediterranean dietary pattern and the DASH dietary pattern with specific foods that were known to have strong evidence for promoting brain health. Combined these together to create a dietary pattern called the MIND dietary pattern. So what is it? And I'm not sure the slide might be quite challenging to read the fine print, but the MIND dietary pattern in a nutshell, pardon the pun, has 10 brain healthy food groups. So they are leafy green vegetables, and those would be things like your spinach, arugula, kale, romaine lettuce, Swiss chard, etc. Then other vegetables, so any other vegetable that you can think of, including things like turnips, mushrooms, onions, those kinds of things. Then berries, and encompassing blueberries, raspberries, saskatoons, chokecherries, strawberries, and even pomegranate seeds would fit under that berries category. And then nuts, things like walnuts, almonds, cashews, pecans, and pistachios. Then your beans and lentils, any kind of bean and lentil, including split peas. Then whole grains, then fish, poultry, olive oil as your primary cooking and eating oil, and then wine. A note on wine that limited quantities of wine, and I would definitely advise that if you're someone that doesn't drink, you don't want to purposefully start. You can get the same from having grape juice, for example, or eating the grapes even. It's just included as a component because it was shown to have an evidence associated with it. But 1 glass a day, and it's a 4-ounce glass, so a small pour, so in very lower quantity. And then there are 5 brain unhealthy foods, they sometimes say, or food groups to sort of limit. And those include butter and hard margarine, fast or fried foods, red meat, particularly that which is processed and non-lean cuts, a group called cheese, pastries, and sweets. And they also make note that you want to limit but not eliminate, because when we eliminate, it often makes us crave these things. And having them in small quantities isn't the issue. It's if you don't have the brain healthy food groups regularly. That's the bigger issue. So again, not trying to be really restrictive, but additive, and thinking about the healthy things that we can add to our diets. So what are the commonalities between these evidence-based dietary approaches, the Mediterranean, DASH, and MIND dietary patterns? Well, really, they represent what we might call a prudent dietary pattern that emphasizes those whole grains, vegetables, healthy oils, and is different than maybe what we could call a typical Western dietary pattern that has a lot of ultra-processed foods and fried foods, high in sugar, low in vegetables and fruit, low in fiber. So there are a lot of commonalities, as you can see, and it's not that you have to choose one and adhere to it and follow it perfectly. In fact, some of the evidence, particularly for the MIND diet, says that even having a moderate or a low adherence, I don't like that word, but following it to a lower level still has a protective effect on cognition, which is kind of encouraging. And then this is the last dietary pattern that I'll talk about. This is from Canada, and it's from Doctors Carol Greenwood and Matthew Perot, who are investigators on the Canadian Consortium on Neurodegeneration and Aging. There's a link there, and you can find this Brain Health Food Guide if you search Brain Health Food Guide Canada, or if you search Canadian Consortium on Neurodegeneration and Aging, or if you look it up at Baycrest. And they developed this to address that healthy aging and preventing cognitive decline and dementia in a Canadian context, because context is important. And I like this quote that I have on the screen that Carol said at one point and was quoted in a news article. "We all know the old adage that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. However, it can also keep dementia away, especially if we skip to the grocery store." So the Brain Health Guide, again, emphasizes these different foods to include and then maybe foods to limit. There's a lovely handout, and I will share the link for this, and it can be emailed out by Randy after the webinar, or again, if you search for it, this will pop up. I really like this. Again, nothing contradicting any of the Mediterranean, DASH, or MIND dietary patterns, but a few additional things to think about. They have some more elaboration on cooking methods for the different foods. So saying that, including these different foods, great. These are healthy, health promoting, cognitive promoting, healthy aging foods to include more often. But also you want to have the different cooking methods for them, like grilling, steaming, or baking instead of deep frying, for instance. And then they also have a nice tip about staying hydrated, because hydration is really important and we often forget about that. So I like that they have this tip, and I like that it's Canadian and very specific to the Canadian context. You can see here that they've also included information on the brain health dietary pattern about what's a serving size. If you're interested in delving into that level, what is a portion that I should be aiming for? And if you can draw your attention to the lower right-hand piece of the slide where it says, remember, trying to change your diet may feel overwhelming. Think of small changes that you can make. And I will say this a few more times in this presentation. Small incremental over time is much better for you than a change that you can do for 2 days and can't maintain. I feel like I've just lied to you because I've put another what looks like a dietary pattern on the screen. But really, it's our National Food Guide. And it was updated in 2019 to be truly evidence-based without any influence allowed from industry lobbyists or marketing boards. And any of you who've worked in government will really appreciate this level that they went to. So the people that were developing the food guide had their emails and telephone calls screened for 3 years. They were screened so that they couldn't even know that they were being contacted by industry lobbyists or marketing boards. So truly very distanced from those sort of places that could introduce bias. And again, very similar guidance. Doesn't really represent a dietary pattern. It's more about nationally, what should we be looking at in terms of how we eat. But I wanted to draw your attention to this because our National Food Guide has now included evidence about that goes beyond the foods that we eat and talks about things like the social implication of nutrition. So recommendations about being mindful of your eating habits, trying to eat more slowly, chew your food, thoroughly enjoy it, not gobble and eat on the run. Cook more often. When we cook, it's often going to have less of the added fat, salt, and sugar than if we eat out, typically, depending how we do it, of course. Enjoy your food. Enjoyment is a very important part of nutrition and healthy eating. Eat with others. Again, sometimes we enjoy solitude and dining alone, but eating with others is also a source of pleasure and connection. Social support is important for healthy aging and also for preventing cognitive decline and dementia. So I love that we now have an evidence-based guidance about eating with others. And also using food labels so that we understand the components of our food and are able to make those distinctions and choices in an informed way. Of course, we have the recommendation to limit foods high in sodium, sugars, or saturated fat, and be very aware of food marketing. Why are they trying to sell you something? So whenever we're thinking about nutrition and healthy eating for healthy aging, we want to consider the physiological health benefits of eating and fueling our bodies, and also the quality of life benefit that comes from enjoying the food, enjoying the social aspect of eating, and connecting with others while we eat. We need to stay aware of these two sides of the nutrition coin, knowing that each is important and can't exist without the other. So I bring your attention to self-assessment. You want to think about your own dietary pattern and think, is this dietary pattern working for me? And then you want to think about the ones that I've just introduced to you today, and what are some pieces of it or patterns of the pattern that you want to incorporate into your own dietary pattern. We have to set down a healthy eating plan that we can incorporate into our regular days for life. I don't want to use the word adhere, but something that we can follow for the rest of our lives, because these things only work while you're doing them. And I did mention things like the cumulative effect, etc. So these are some suggestions of things to consider when you're thinking about your own dietary pattern, and maybe some changes to make or things to emphasize that you already do quite well. So you want to consider cost. Of course we do. Food cost is a big consideration. It always is. And I would say even more so right now with what we're experiencing at the grocery stores. You, of course, want to think about food allergies and intolerances. That has to be factored in. No matter how many times I read about the health benefits of salmon, it doesn't make me more able to have them. I'm not able to eat fish. So I have to think about, okay, is there another way that I can gain those health benefits given my limitations and my dietary pattern? And your preferences. If you don't like something, forcing yourself to eat it isn't going to be enjoyable, and it's not going to be a long-term solution for you. So I always say we're at a point in the world where we have more access to variety than we've ever had. If you don't like something, well, maybe try it a different way in terms of preparation, or find something similar and try that. Don't just discount a whole, I don't like vegetables, for example. Again, you want to think about your individual nutrition goals. Is it that you want to gain some weight in a healthy way, gain some muscle? Is it that you want to find a way to increase your hydration and drink more water in the day? And those are very individual and personal to you and your experience of your health. You want to consider your food skills and abilities, possibly ways that you can learn more to enhance or build upon the skills that you have. And you, of course, want to make sure that it's a fit with your lifestyle and your quality of life is enhanced by it and not limited by it. Then once you've figured out your dietary pattern or any of those changes, things that you want to incorporate, you want to monitor. Do I enjoy this? Is it still, are these things that I have considered at the start? How is it impacting those things? And then, especially if it's something like you're following a pattern that is going to impact things like hypertension, and say you're on a blood pressure medication, you'll want to monitor that closely with your pharmacist, because there could be a point where you need to decrease the medication. It could be dangerous if you have two things working to lower your blood pressure. That's one specific example. And then always remember that you're considering the next 10,000 meals, not the next 10. It's sometimes easy to think really big and make dramatic changes. But again, if you can maintain that for 7 days, woohoo. If you can't maintain it for 70 or 7,000 days. Much more impactful if they're maintained long-term. So in terms of nutrition and healthy eating, ideally, we're striving for that balance where both aspects, the physiological and the quality of life, are contributing to good health and well-being. But we also have an awareness that balance is aspirational. The scales might tip to one or the other at different meals or at different times in our year or different times of our lives. Remembering, I say it again, balance is aspirational. It's important to stay positive and not get discouraged as we try to pursue that perfect balance. It's what matters over the long term, not at one meal. So, bottom line, you want to eat well to live well. And I'm going to give you 7 practical strategies for healthy aging and enhancing cognitive health. Number 1, quit smoking or reduce the amount you smoke. Even if you can't quit, reducing is going to be helpful. Attend to your health regularly or manage your health conditions. Make sure you have that regular yearly checkup or whatever the cycle is of seeing your physician or allied providers like a dietitian or pharmacist or physical therapist, etc. Manage those health conditions, take care of them, don't let them direct you. Keep your mind active, stay engaged. I mean, all of you online right now, you're attending a webinar. Great way to keep your mind active, but also socializing, playing cards, seeing your friends, having conversations. Be social, really important. The connections, they have more than just about keeping the brain health physiologically, but that emotional support and connection has a really important feature to our overall health and our experience of quality of life. Healthy sleep. You want to strive for this and really look into your sleep habits. Try to get that nice 8 hours a day or a night that you need. really can't emphasize this enough. Move your body. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go join a CrossFit gym or a specific program. If anyone online remembers Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod, the Participation Body Break spokespeople, back in 2018, I had the pleasure of meeting them because they are spokespeople for the Canadian Frailty Network and trying to reduce the experience of frailty. And all of their messaging still holds true. Move your body. It doesn't have to be intense and structured, although that's great if you enjoy that, but park further away. Take the stairs when you can. Just move your body in a way that's pleasurable and contributes to your function and your ability, your upkeep of those muscles and your body. Fun fact, Hal Johnson's mom was from Regina, Saskatchewan. So we had a lovely bonding connection over Saskatchewan. And last, of course, I'm going to say this, eat well. Eat well to live well. Emphasize variety, moderation, and enjoyment. So I'm giving you what I would call a general overview, a taste, if you will. Of course, if you have specific needs that require more in-depth assessment and assistance in terms of your dietary pattern and your eating, for that, you're going to want to consult with a registered dietitian. And we have many private practice dietitians in the province now. It's similar to the way that like physiotherapists working in clinics. And some dietitians actually work out of physical therapy clinics or rehab centers. And then with the COVID-19 pandemic, most of the private practice dietitians now offer virtual service as well. So you can access them from anywhere across the province that you have a web connection. And I will mention, I'll give a plug for Eat Well Saskatchewan. This is a program being supported by Indigenous Services Canada and the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition currently, where any resident of Saskatchewan, any Saskatchewan person can email eatwell@usas.ca or phone the 1-833 number, the free of charge number, and get nutrition advice from a registered dietitian. And I'll just pop up a picture. This is Carrie Vereshagin. She's the dietitian for Eat Well. I like to have the photo there so that you know she's not an intimidating face that you'd be experiencing on the line. Lovely to talk to. So it's a free provincial service currently. And if she could connect you with a private practice dietitian, if you're wanting to discuss who would be a good fit for you and for your particular needs, she can answer any general nutrition questions that you have or connect you to local community services. She can even sometimes answer some fairly complex or specific questions. So I'll leave you with this last thought. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. Remember that small changes that can be maintained over time are more powerful in the long run than a dramatic change that you can only sustain for 1 week. And with that, thank you for having me here today, and happy Nutrition Month, everyone.
Sorry about that, people. My mic was muted. Thank you, Allison, for your contribution and your good words to us. It's very interesting to shift the thinking when you shift the words to dietary pattern away from diet. And so I appreciate and thank you for introducing that. I mean, too often I think we talk about dieting and then think of all of the reasons you can't keep doing that and that. And I like the idea when you talked about small changes, think ahead for 10,000 meals rather than 10 or the next 3 and that. So I think that's really important. And this whole notion of just eat well to live well is words to kind of internalize and make sure that we continue to think about. So those are very good thoughts. The number of kind of dietary patterns you introduced, I think, are important for us to look at. And I think it was important that you spoke to some of the misinformation that's around there, some of the quick fixes that we see in the literature and bombard us every day through media and that. So very much appreciate your comments. So thank you for that. I guess at this stage, then we will shift to questions. And that's so people, if you have questions that you are thinking about and didn't yet put into the question box, please do. And Lyle, no doubt, has been trying to deal with those. I hope they're coming in hot and heavy, Lyle. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lyle for questions and Allison for responses. So take it away.
Thank you. I have a few here. First one's from Elizabeth. It says, please speak to the meal portion size in relation to age, gender, and daily activities. And your mic's on mute.
The meal portion size in terms of
Related to age, gender, and daily activities.
So you've just asked quite the big question. And that's one of the reasons that our National Food Guide went away from those portion sizes and those descriptions, because it is so it varies by individual, not only according to if you're male or female or of a certain age, because of a not wild variety, a number of reasons, things like your genetics and your activity level and the exact makeup of what we would call the macronutrients, the carbohydrate, protein, and fat that you're having at each meal, and different factors like that. So there's not a quick answer or a one size fits all guidance that way. We try to say things about, you're seeking some balance. You're trying to find a dietary pattern that works for you. You want to monitor the fit of your clothing is the sort of the crude measurement. I wouldn't advocate for weighing yourself every day, but you want to sort of, my clothes are getting a little bit too loose. I might want to think about what I'm eating. Maybe I need to add a snack here or there or increase my portion size a little bit. Or the alternate, this waistband is digging in when it didn't used to. I want to think about this too. So there's not a population level answer that it can give you there. But if you're worried about your particulars, again, that's where I would say book an appointment, have an assessment with a dietitian to look at you specifically and assess your needs.
Thank you. Next question is from Andrew. Is there some evidence that links lectins or lectin, Lectin, to leaky gut syndrome? Should one be wary of eating foods with high in lichens? So hope I spelt that right and said it right.
So I think that this is hitting the press recently, things like leaky gut syndrome and different what we'd call non-nutritive components of food. So different foods, like we'll process them to make them edible. So the word processed there, not speaking in the same way as ultra processed foods, which would be, your chips, your chocolate, that kind of thing. But things like we process grain to make it edible in a way that we can use it, or we process seeds to get the oil from them, that kind of thing. So in a similar way, we process legumes, beans, so that the non-nutritive properties of them aren't going to affect us the way if we ate them raw would. So it's rarely a danger that someone's going to eat a handful of split peas without cooking them, or grab a thing of brown beans without having them either canned or cooked into a dish of some sort. And so the different things like lignans or lectins, etc., people worry about them because they learn, this is a component of food. But often the way we cook the food or prepare the food item, the ingredient prior to eating it, already takes care of that, so that we won't experience the harmful effect in our body. I'm not answering that really well. In a nutshell, I'd say no, that's not something you need to worry about terribly. Again, at the individual level, if you're experiencing some intolerance symptoms or it's compromising your health, I would check that out with someone in case it is something like, a bowel polyp or inflammatory bowel disease or something like that. But if it's simply sort of digestive effects of food, no, that's okay. Does that answer the question, do you think?
I think so. Yes.
Kind of rambled a bit there.
Okay. From Laverne, how do you feel about vitamins and supplements for retired people?
So my general statement is we want to take a food first approach to life, but supplements have their place too. So for example, the best example that I can give here in Canada is vitamin D. There are a good 7-8 months of the year that you could stand outside naked and we don't have the right angle of sunlight for our skin to produce vitamin D from the sun. So we recommend supplementing vitamin D for everyone in Canada for many months of the year. So there's definitely a role for supplements. But I will give also the flip side of that, the caution that, you're not going to supplement your way out of a poor diet overall. You can't go and eat fast food for every meal and pop a multivitamin and be like, I'm good. It doesn't work that way, if that makes sense.
Okay. Next question is from Karen. She said a bit off topic, but connective improvement dietary patterns post-menopausal weight gain is not uncommon. Is there any recommended dietary patterns that would benefit these experiences?
Post-menopausal weight gain and can certain dietary patterns impact?
Yeah.
Again, that is something that it's really driven at the individual level. The general dietary patterns in conjunction with activity level, body composition, and the specific serving sizes and timing, you have to look at all of those in concert together. And it is challenging because there are the postmenopausal hormonal changes do, for many women, come with some unintended weight gain or body mass change, which is the bigger issue. It's not that you're gaining muscle. So again, that's something you want to dive into at a personal level, and I would recommend. Wow, I sound like I'm trying to drum up business for the private practice dietitians. They're busy. They don't need me shilling for them, but I would recommend seeking some assistance from a dietitian.
Okay. Next question is from David. Being a diabetic, is fruit still good for you with natural sugars? Are there some foods that are good for organs like kidneys, livers, and etc.?
Great question. And especially sugars become, it's just, there's a headline every day about sugar and natural sugar, fake sugar. Your body can't tell the difference once it's in there. So there's that piece of it. So when we say things like someone has diabetes and you do have to then limit your sugar and control that intake in a way that it's going to work with your body processes so that you don't have high blood sugar and the effects of that, or too low of blood sugar and the effects of that. So I appreciate where your question's coming from. Having said that, so you're not the natural sugar component. We do say avoid sugar sweetened beverages and even just naturally sugar sweet beverages. Mm-hmm. So if it comes down to it, relatively having a glass of fruit juice, not as healthy as having that actual piece of fruit, because it will have the other pieces. So example being an orange, you get the cellular membranes of that orange. You get the pith that sticks to the membrane that encases each orange segment. So you have a slower digestion and the fiber, which slows the amount of sugar going into your blood and spiking at any time. And you then also get the good components of those, the fiber, the pith, etc. or an apple, let's use that as an example, the different nutrients that are in the peel and the soluble fiber that's embedded with the apple instead of just the juice, which is just that sugar, liquid sugar extracted from it. So that's a rambling response to that question as well. But I also avoid saying something is good or bad. It's all relative. So is artificial, like is a sugar sweetened, is a tablespoon of molasses or a brown sugar cube bad? Well, not compared to heroin, not compared to eating a salt block, like it's all relative. So you want to take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you. Laverne asked a question, is bone density related to diet or is it dealt with through regular exercise?
Oh, I love this question, Laverne, because it's very easy to answer. Both. You need the component nutrients coming in. So you need some protein, you need calcium, you need your magnesium and vitamin D to create the component of that bone. And then the weight bearing exercise is what's going to solidify and strengthen that bone. So you need exercise and you need diet. It's always going to be both.
Okay, thank you. This question's from us. Dementia scares me. What are some of the important things I should be doing to prevent or at least reduce my chance of losing my memory?
So dementia scares everyone. And there was actually a study done that dementia is more frightening to people than dying in a plane crash. And, this isn't an easy question because it is scary. So I appreciate where you're coming from and asking that. All of the things about healthy living need to work in concert together. So eating well, moving your body, etc. But the research does show that if you can only manage to do one thing, it's move your body. Get that aerobic exercise going that's going to stimulate blood to your brain, etc. That one has sort of the most powerful risk reduction capability. But again, I said, it's always going to be both. They're always linked because there's also a really nice study done. I'd love to see this done in a large scale setting where people that increased their exercise, that moving their body without any other intervention or encouragement to do so, ended up making some dietary changes that were quite healthy as well. So there's something about these health promoting behaviors that cluster and link together.
Yep. Next question is from Shanta. As my ethnic background, my staple diet is rice and lentils. Taking different spices or spicing levels, how it affects the mind dieting pattern. Different spices or spicing levels, how does it affect the mind dieting pattern?
So one of the things about that dietary pattern, the mind dietary pattern, is that, if you're having, a lot of the legumes, I think you said lentils, yes?
Yes, lentils and rice.
And rice. So adding in sort of the green leafy vegetables with that, or adding in some of the other components as well. The Mediterranean dietary pattern really promotes the use of herbs and spices over salt. And we are only really starting to understand what happens in the body with different spices. So recently, there would have been a couple of years ago, there was a lot of buzz about turmeric because there's a component of it called curcumin, which actually has an anti-inflammatory property that helps with the brain. Now you'd have to eat it in massive quantity to get the studied effect of it. But having said that, there's something about adding these different spices that could be quite helpful to the body. And it's not the same as adding, fat or salt to create that flavor profile. So things like, cloves and cinnamon or garlic Actually, another fun fact, the component of garlic that such a health benefit, it's actually called Allison. I love saying that. And it's been well studied to be helpful in your body. So the spices and flavor components, they may have really important health benefits that we're only just starting to understand, the different polyphenols, etc., that are components of them.
Thank you. This question's from Norman. Is Splenda Stevia a better sweetener to use?
Again, at a population level, the suggestion, like the overall suggestion would be, try to just start cutting back on the sugar so that you do develop sort of a preference for sweet if you have it regularly. So if you start cutting back slowly over time, you actually develop less of a preference for that sweet flavor. But if it is something you love and enjoy, if you're someone who has diabetes, then yes, an artificial sweetener is a better choice for you than table sugar or any of the sugars. That's for sure, because those sugars will cause a spike in your blood sugar that's not going to make you feel good, whereas the artificial sweeteners won't do that.
Thanks. Just another question from us. As a senior living on a fixed income and with price of fresh fruit and vegetables so expensive, what options would you suggest for us to be able to still eat healthy?
And that's a great question, and very, very much on everyone's mind right now as we look at our grocery bills. They're increasing. So first off, I would say that we have a few myths that we have to combat and we have to get over. So we used to think things like frozen vegetables and frozen fruit wasn't as healthy as a fresh. But that's due to how we used to process. We used to have to blanch vegetables, so dip them in boiling water for a fair bit of time to ensure that the surface bacteria were killed so that they could be frozen and not harm anyone. But the way that they're produced or harvested now off the field and then flash frozen in a really safe manner quickly means that we don't do that blanching, and that blanching is what brought the nutritive value down. So frozen, almost equivalent health value to fresh. The other piece, and significantly cheaper, because the transport is much easier when they flash freeze at the field side and then can transport on trucks rather than having them picked and put into particular packing to transport safely without bruising or damaging. So go for some frozen. It's going to save on your bill, and it will likely have about the same nutritive value. The other one is canned. So canned often means that you're going to look at salt, that the salt level will be a bit higher. But for things that you can rinse, like your beans or, canned corn, canned vegetable, the salt, some of it does seep into the food, but if you can drain it and then rinse that, you're going to get rid of a lot of the salt. And again, canned food, easier to transport, so therefore cheaper. So I would start looking into some of those and combat that myth. And let's even just for a moment say that they aren't quite as healthy as fresh. Well, they're still healthier than not having vegetables and fruit. And if cost is that consideration, then making that choice to go for the slightly cheaper version. Another piece would be buying in bulk is often a way to create some cost savings, but particularly for seniors, as you mentioned, you might be, a single occupant household, or just a couple. You don't have the family living with you anymore and needing to have these bulk grocery purchases. So finding friends and creating a grocery shopping sort of club so that you can capitalize on when things are on sale and buy them in bulk, and then share it amongst one another. So you still get that cost savings, but don't have the huge volume that's going to spoil.
And one more question I want to ask you is, what are some of the simple changes I could take towards a healthier lifestyle that could improve my mental health and health in general going forward?
Some simple changes for a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to want to look at your own and not just sort of casually like mull over some thoughts, but actually sort of give some scrutiny. What does my day-to-day life look like? And where are places that I can maybe add a few small tweaks or pair a habit with things like preparing breakfast that I can, something like baked oatmeal where I can have that for 3 days. So I cook once, eat 3 times things. So you're saving some time. And maybe if you're not as motivated to do that task, you do it once over 3 times, or partnering with someone to help motivate you to go move your body, or creating the social opportunities that then you walk together, or pair the healthy behaviors and healthy small changes that are going to promote health with someone. So you get the social support, the connection, and the health behavior together. But again, having that really like that self-scrutiny, where do I want to invest my time and make these efforts? Where am I ignoring because I don't want to think about it? Let's shed some light there. And then actually just sort of figure out what's the low-hanging fruit. I am using a lot of food puns, but the low-hanging fruit, what's one easy thing to do? Because that's going to likely have some staying power with you, and you'll see some gains from it, and that might motivate further.
Thank you. I have no other questions at the moment. We just have a question for us from Kathy. She's wondering if there's going to be a copy of the PowerPoint emailed to them, or is it going to be on the SRA website? This total streaming thing will be on our website, and possibly we will put our PowerPoint slides on our website as well. So I'll just wait a moment in case there's more questions, and then if not, I'll give it back to Allison for some last comments if you have any. So. No other questions have come in, so okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Next Wednesday is National Dietitians Day. So if you know a dietitian, send them a happy Dietitians Day message. And thank you so much for having me talk about this. It's near and dear to my heart and very important.
Okay, thank you very much, Allison. And clearly it's near and dear to your heart. I happen to have, my wife and I happen to have a niece who's a registered dietitian, and when we have issues, we often are in touch with her to say like, what about this or what about that? So I know that advice is very helpful, and we happen to have one in the family, so we can get some relatively inexpensive support and advice to help our lifestyle along. So again, thank you so much for that. Members, thank you for your questions. That's always an exciting part of these webcasts, is to see what questions come in, the variety of them, and you never fail to impress me and this group about your interests and your knowledge and that. So thanks again. Moving on then. Just a few things to sort of wrap this up. We continue to look for ideas around future webcasts. Towards the end of this, I guess at the end of this session, there will be a survey come up on your screens that will ask you just both for information about this session and your impressions and your thoughts and feedback for us that we can use so we can improve session to session to session. We also are asking you for your ideas for future webcasts. So anything that you think of that you think would be of interest to you is probably going to be of interest to many people. And so we would encourage you to let us know what you are interested in. Some ideas that have come in already relate to wills and estates. what it's like to retire with a mortgage, and home supports, which is the initiative through the Saskatchewan Seniors Mechanism that the Saskatchewan Retirees Association has been supporting, continues to be on everybody's level of interest as something to continue to talk about in terms of the whole thing about independent living and that. So those are the types of sessions that we'll be looking at doing later in this year. And so you can look forward to those. Watch for announcements, watch for e-blasts from us, watch the newsletter at our website for schedules and times for those types of opportunities. I would also remind you again that our annual general meeting is on May the 25th. We are looking at trying to put together a combination of both in-person gathering plus a virtual opportunity where people can participate. I think more on that to come soon. We're trying to sort out some of the logistics of how to do that at this stage, but our feedback from you last year was to try and do that, but provide people that were unable to join us in person, either at that stage, particularly the continuation of COVID, and also just distance. So people have asked us if there can be a way we can continue that and allow more like this, more of an interaction like this, where there's an opportunity for questions and that. So we're working on that. So with that, look to you, Lyle, just one last time, if there's any final questions. No?
I have no other questions at this moment. No.
Okay, thank you. So then what we will do at this stage is just wind it down to say, once again, thank you, Allison. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and your presentation and just your enthusiasm about nutrition, whether it be for older adults or the general population. It's very helpful to hear those comments, and so we do appreciate the fact you made yourself available. It would help us out, and I'm sure our feedback from our members will reflect that, and we will be sharing that with you. So I think too then, just like to say again, I mentioned the survey. It will come up on your screen in a minute or two, and that please stay on for a moment and take care of that. Help us understand what we could do different or do better another time. And so with that, again, thanks to Allison, thanks to the SRA board for your support. Thanks to Ken and to Lyle today. And of course, we always want to thank Terry Scott, VoiceWorks and Webcast Canada to help the production of this type of webcast behind the scenes to make sure it's solid, make sure it's professional, and make sure that it goes forward without any blips and hiccups and bumps in the road. It really is helpful that way. And you have given us good feedback to say that you appreciate the fact that this is a quality presentation that you can rely on and not. So that's why, in large part, why we are confident putting it up on our website and onto YouTube for viewers that may not be able to join us today. So again, thank you. We have moved through this rather fairly quickly, and that's good too. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and we wish you the best. And spring is on its way, believe me. So we will see you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye for now.